We the ones they talking about.
Broadway Sports Media.
Choose your fighter.
Justin and Justin Titans podcast show.
Some of it was bad, but hopefully you probably piece something together.
Outstanding.
There's an earthquake in the middle of the podcast. Unbelievable.
We're begging for listeners. That's all we do.
We all we got. Hey, Titans on three. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome everyone to another.
You got to keep it in.
Oh my gosh.
You got to keep it in.
Hop down. Good boy.
If you guys are listening to this and not watching it, just as Graver started, his dog just jumped on him and started licking his face.
That'll be for the YouTube audience only. Here we go for the audio. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media and 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me as always, Justin Melo. And Justin, thank God the Titans have something going on that is very interesting for us to talk about in June. How's it going?
Doing well. Do we ever have something to talk about? Something that I have a very bad short-term memory, in all honesty. Did we write off the possibility last week?
I might need to own up to that a little bit by saying that this felt extremely different from the Jadeveon Clowney sweepstakes, from the Julio Jones on the trade block sweepstakes, where I said those felt like those two guys were going to end up Titans, and Hopkins did not. Well, do I look like an idiot today? Yes, DeAndre Hopkins is visiting Nashville right now as we record this podcast. Also today we are going to get into Titans minicamp takeaways. We got a great guest coming on. The incredible Jim Wyatt will join us in a little bit to talk Titans minicamp. But first, we got to break down this Hopkins situation because now that it feels like a real possibility, there's a lot more for us to talk about. Before it was like, this ain't going to happen. But now it's like, the dude's in Nashville, for goodness sake.
It's his first visit, right? It's the first visit he's taken. It's being released. It's his only visit so far. There are reports that he's going to be meeting with the New England Patriots, but Bill Belichick might have thrown a wrench into that on Monday, June 12th, when he said, I'm not sure when he's coming in. We had it planned, but there's some logistical things. That could just be Bill Belichick being Bill Belichick and keeping his cards close to the chest. But this is interesting. And I will say, I do feel kind of silly because when we go back and think about it, and a part of me wants to laugh at it, I feel like maybe we just didn't want to get our hopes up.
I know where you're going with this, though.
Yeah, because when you start, I mean, look, the moment he was released, I wrote an article, and I'm not trying to save myself here, but I wrote an article talking about, three suitors for him, and I immediately picked the Titans, and this was for the Draft Network, my day gig. So it wasn't a Titans-based article is what I'm trying to get at here. They just asked me to pick three suitors, and I picked the Titans because for all the reasons that he's probably visiting Nashville now, they obviously need a receiver. We know how bad the receiving core is, probably the worst in the league, and I stick to that. All the connections, we know about the connection with Mike Vrabel. We know about the connection with Tim Kelly. I had kind of forgotten the connection with Charles London as well, right? Who's now the Titans quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator. He was there in Houston for the whole time Vrabel was. I think it was like 5 years. Coach London spent with Hopkins, and I believe is the running backs coach of the Texans. So he was on the offensive side of the ball. So there's three staff connections right there: head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and passing game coordinator, right? And then you get into the need that they have a receiver. It does, make some sense for Hopkins from his standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And we were following this situation closely on Twitter over the last few days. Haven't had a chance to react to it. A lot of people looking at the Bill Belichick comments as some sort of indication that's like, oh, maybe they're waiting to see if Hopkins decides to sign with the Titans while he's in Nashville. I think we can kind of cool it on that talk, a little conspiracy theory of that, like, oh, they don't know if he's going to visit New England because he might sign with Tennessee. Now, I'm prepared to be extremely wrong again here. But
I was going to say, I hope you're wrong again, because I know what you're about to say.
But everything we've heard about Hopkins wanting a new team since, back to before he was even released by the Cardinals, was that he was going to, his soft deadline was training camp. He's going to make multiple visits with teams across the league, and he'll decide, before the end of July. It's middle of June right now, so I don't think we should expect him to sign, in the next day or two or three. But it would be great if he did. But again, I'll be prepared to be wrong. But I don't think that's the case. I think this is more about, just Belichick, like you said, just being Belichick and speaking to the media in things that he doesn't want to look dumb or wrong if Hopkins did decide to sign with Tennessee and cancel the rest of his visits. I think that's the only place Belichick's coming from. But let's talk about this from, a realistic standpoint. Can the Titans afford DeAndre Hopkins? Because they have, about $7 million in cap space once they get the Levis contract done. So it's not like they are rolling in money here, or free money in terms of what Hopkins has outwardly stated that he wants, which is a contract, he said, similar to what Odell Beckham signed earlier this offseason with the Baltimore Ravens. So first thing we should do, let's look at Odell Beckham's contract. Beckham signed a 1-year deal, $15 million with $13.835 guaranteed. But his cap hit for the 2023 season is $3.932 million, according to Spotrac. So $3.9 million cap hit for this season, but he's on a 1-year, $15 million contract. Well, the reason that they are able to do this is because he signed 4 void years tacked on to the end of this 1-year deal. His base salary for 2023 is only $1.165 million. So if they cut him before the end of the season, it's a $15 million dead cap. That's not going to happen. Next year, he has a cap hit of $11 million. He won't even be on the roster next year, most likely, unless they sign an extension before this season ends. So would the Titans be able to do something like that? And then for the last 3 years of this voided year contract thing, it's $2.767 million. So very minimal cap hits for 2025, 2026, 2027. The 2024 cap hit is at $11 million. 2023 cap hit this season, $3.9 million. Titans could easily squeeze a $3.9 million cap hit onto the books for this season. And next year, they're going to have they're going to be one of the teams with the most salary cap space in the entire NFL. So if they need to eat $11 million next year for one season, this season of DeAndre Hopkins, they could totally do that financially speaking. Is it worth it? Is it worth it for 1 year of Hopkins at age 30? That's a different question. What kind of knowledge and experience could he impart on a very young Titans receiving core? Would it be worth it to do that for 1 year in a year where, if you're being a very realistic Titans fan, you don't think that this is a Super Bowl team and you don't think Hopkins pushes them into Super Bowl contender status. So I guess the question is, would it be worth taking an $11 million dead cap hit next year to get one season of Hopkins?
It's a debatable question. And I think you could answer either way and probably make an argument for it. What I will say is that 11 million is probably not, that's obviously a figurative number, but that's not going to kill them if that were to be the case next year, assuming, right, which I think I'm assuming correctly here, that they're not going to be re-signing Ryan Tannehill, most likely, and that they're maybe not re-signing Derrick Henry either, right? So you've got a quarterback on a rookie deal, whether that's Will Levis or Malik Willis. You got a running back that's probably on a rookie deal with Tajay Spears, maybe a combination of him and Hassan Haskins. You got a bunch of rookie playmakers still on their deal, Traylon Burks, Chig Okonkwo, Kyle Phillips. You can go on and on. A left guard, Peter Skoronski, on a rookie deal. Nicholas Petit-Frere still on a rookie deal. You're not going to be spending a ton of money right on the offensive side of the ball. Now, obviously, they're going to have about $100 million in cap space. If that puts you down to, say, 89, that's still a lot of money to spend in free agency, right? If you want to go out and get a couple of guys. I mean, I think the Bears have entered this year with like $90 million in cap space. And not that they went crazy, but they went out and acquired DJ Moore. They went out and got Tremaine Edmonds. I believe they got TJ Edwards. They got Nate Davis, DeMarcus Walker, right? A couple ex-Titans. So you could go out and still get a lot of players for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 million, whatever it is you feel like spending. So it's something that wouldn't kill them. But I do think it's fair to, because on the flip side of that, I don't want to look too biased. It is money you cannot use, essentially, right, at that point, right? You are losing $11 million towards that for a player that may not even be on the roster if you're doing a 1-year deal structured in the Beckham manner. So you can argue, no, this team's still not going to beat the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs with a DeAndre Hopkins. It's right. It's unlikely that they're making a Super Bowl run. So you could argue both sides, but I'll tell you, I'm rooting for it to happen because I got to be honest with you. I don't remember the last time, and recency bias probably plays a role into this statement, but I don't remember the last time I went into a Titan season this disinterested, in all honesty, in the football team, right? Like, and hopefully we're wrong, and there's going to be some excitement that pops up, and they maybe they're better than we think they are, but like when they went out and got Julio Jones, for example, I remember the first thing I said to a friend of mine was, I believe this team could win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And they
same.
were 11-5 that year, and the Julio thing backfired, and they were still a pretty good football team, right? Going into last year, I still felt that they had a chance to be a pretty damn good football team. And we saw flashes of it when they were 7-3. I don't feel that way this year. Well, now you know what you didn't know, right? You saw some of that lack of depth last year, the injuries, yada, yada. You think it's gone backwards this offseason. So I don't have that same feeling I've had since 2019, right? So it's not a very good feeling, in all honesty. It's not a place you ever want to be as a fan. And I hate that I'm doing this right now. I hate that I'm doing it, but you get DeAndre Hopkins. I said to one of my coworkers today, I'm like, all of a sudden, like, the supporting cast, if things go right, and they would have to go right, I go, you look at, you got DeAndre Hopkins. I still think Derrick Henry's a very good running back. I'm very, very excited about what Chigo Kwanko is capable of. In all honesty, I'm more excited about him than Treylon Burks. And I feel like I'm on an island there. I still need to see Treylon stay healthy before I stop getting concerned that he's an injury-prone guy, right? The hamstrings last year, the turf toe, concussion was a freak accident, but he missed a lot of football last year, and he missed a lot of football during training camp. So I'm more excited about a Kwanko right now. And not to say I'm not excited about Burks, but I really feel the sky's the limit for a Kwanko. I think this guy can be an elite tight end. But again, I'm going to recap the combination. You've got DeAndre Hopkins, you've got Derrick Henry, you got Chiga Kwanko, you got Treylon Burks, you got Kyle Phillips. Hopefully, it can be a good slot guy for you. Chris Moore will contribute there if he can't. And then what Tajay Spears could potentially be, as well as sort of a change of pace, a big-time pass-catching back. All of a sudden, and the O-line still gives me a lot of pause, but all of a sudden, that looks like a pretty good supporting cast, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that is a lot better offense. You're still going to be reliant on the offensive line coming together and playing at a higher level with some young guys stepping up, some new faces. It could derail
the whole thing.
Gelling. Yeah, absolutely it could. But, if everything worked out at its ultimate, I think Hopkins would make the Titans at least AFC South favorites. And once you get into the playoffs, we saw what the Bengals did a few years ago. Like, anything can happen once you get there. And, think of what you will about Ryan Tannehill as a playoff quarterback or whatever, but the last time he had two receivers that you could count on in A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, he had a pretty damn good year. When he had A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, he was one of the best statistical quarterbacks in the NFL. And then, last year, with his top targets being rookies and Nick Westbrook-Akina, sure, he didn't look like the same quarterback, but if you get Hopkins, who's a guy that makes quarterbacks look better. Look at DeAndre Hopkins' career history and the quarterbacks he played with in Houston and the numbers that he was able to put up with subpar quarterback play. I know he's not the same guy. He's 30 years old. He may have lost a step, but, our buddy Wes on Broadway posted a few clips the other day of Hopkins. He scored 3 touchdowns last season. And in all 3 touchdowns, you can see the burst of speed on one of them. You can see the ability to make guys miss, the contested catch ability, the one-handed catch he had against the Vikings. Like, this guy can still play at a pretty high level. Maybe not the same level he was in 2017 or whatever, but he's still a damn good receiver and would make this offense a hell of a lot better than it looks on paper right now if he can stay healthy, which has been the problem with these big signings over the last few years.
Well, can I pose a question to you, and I want you to answer it? Because I'm sure if we go back and listen to the Julio Jones and Robert Woods episodes, I'm sure we were almost just as excited about both of them, if not more excited for Julio potentially. What gives you confidence? Why do you have confidence? Why do you have faith that it's not that all over again?
I wouldn't necessarily have faith or confidence. I would say I have hope because, look, John Robinson made a lot of errors in his time as general manager, but ultimately he tried and he just happened to swing and miss on all these guys that could have been big additions. And Hopkins may end up being the same thing. But if Mike Vrabel, who has worked with him closely, you mentioned Tim Kelly, Charles London, these guys know him. If they talk to him and feel like he's the same guy, I don't know if he's going to do a workout for them with this visit, but if he did, I feel like that he's probably above that in terms of like his status as a player. But
I bet they'd love to see it, though. I was thinking right before you said it. I was thinking, I'm like, I bet Vrabel, Kelly, London, because they'll remember what it looked like, right, in Houston. I bet they'd love to see what it looks like now.
I mean, he's got to stay healthy, but when he was on the field last year, he was a damn good receiver. The year before that, I guess he was taking PEDs, but he was a really damn good receiver. He still had one of the most amazing plays that a wide receiver has had in the past decade when he had the Hail Mary catch from Kyler Murray to win that game against the Bills. And I want to return really quickly to the contract point because the Odell Beckham structure is only one way to do it. That's not the only way you can do it. I want to shout out Will Lomas for posting an article on Monday morning because the Ramon, Kayla, and Will show in Nashville, the radio station, had Michael Giannitti on from Spotrac. He runs the Spotrac Twitter account to talk about what, this contract might look like. And he mentioned that the highest guarantee any free agent contract has signed over the last 6 seasons between June and September. So now that we're into June, we're out of the big high price free agency deals. So between June and September, the most amount of guaranteed money that any free agent got over the last 6 seasons was only $9 million. Hopkins is asking for 13, 15 million guaranteed. Is any team going to be willing to offer that? So he went on to say that a 2-year, $20 million deal with 10 million guaranteed, which would, again, be the highest of the last 6 seasons, would make a lot of sense. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because, Hopkins might just hold out until he gets a better offer than a 2-year, $20 million deal.
That'd be a smoking deal for the Titans.
That would be a great deal for the Titans, but there are other ways to go. They could restructure somebody such as Harold Landry. Mike Herndon tweeted this out the other day. A restructure of Landry's deal would create $10.44 million of 2023 cap space and would add an additional $3.4 million in each of 2024, 2025, and 2026 to the books. So rather than losing $11 million for the next season, you'd only lose $3 million. And then with that Odell Beckham deal, there were 3 more years beyond that of a $2.5-ish million cap hit. So you'd take Landry's cap hit at about $3.5 million for the next 3 years in order to fit Hopkins onto the books just for this season and not have dead cap space pushed forward. Or another way to go.
Oh, sorry,
I got one more.
Go ahead.
This is from Zach Lyons, Football and Other F Words. His personal choice for the Titans to make room for DeAndre Hopkins, if necessary, would be to extend Kevin Byard.
Yes.
Now, this would solve 2 issues in one. Byard's not happy with the current state of his deal. The Titans aren't either, asking him to take a pay cut or whatever. You give Byard an extension, throw him a huge signing bonus this season, which then gets spread out over the length of the rest of whatever the extension of that contract would be, and create the cap space by taking his $19 million cap hit for this season down to like 5 or so, which you could do with a big signing bonus. Make Kevin Byard happy. He gets cash up front. Make everyone happy because his cap hit is way lower. So the Ryan Carthon isn't stressed out about having a $19 million safety on the books, and you make space for Hopkins. Any of these options could work. So if there's anyone out there that looks at the Titans salary cap currently, how much room they have left in 2023, and you've seen Twitter accounts out there like, how could the Titans even sign Hopkins? They only have $7 million, $9 million in cap space, whatever it is right now. And again, Will Levis's contract will impact that too. They can easily do something, whether it's the Odell Beckham contract, whether it's restructure Landry, whether it's extend Kevin Byard, or etc. Trade Ryan Tannehill, although I don't know why you would sign Hopkins if you're planning to trade Tannehill. The point is it would be easy if they'd make the right move to fit Hopkins onto the books.
There are so many options, and I hate myself for saying this because I don't think it's going to happen, but I just want to point out that there are additional possibilities. They could extend Tannehill or Henry. Right. And create some immediate, both of them are in contract years, and I don't think they'll do that, but that's another way they could create immediate cap space. On the topic of Harold Landry, I just wanted to add, I think one of the benefits of maybe restructuring his deal, you're adding future cap money to future years as opposed to doing it with Hopkins, is you're fairly confident Harold Landry will still be on your roster.
Right.
I think, right. That's one of the differences. And you got to see how he heals from the ACL. I hate speaking in definitives when, we yet to see what it looks like, but you're fairly confident he'll be on your roster at that point.
Right, and I fully agree with that. And I want to talk about, Titans players wanting DeAndre Hopkins on this roster.
Oh, yeah.
Jeffrey Simmons went on, whatever it was, something on NFL Network with Michael Robinson last week, and they asked him about it, like, have you tried recruiting him or contacting him? And I want to play the beginning of this clip here, what Simmons had to say in response.
We already know what news broke earlier today that, DeAndre Hopkins, the wide receiver, may be taking a visit, man. Like, you got a recruiting pitch for him? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's crazy because, I didn't know until today. And then of course, I already sent the DM, like, come on with it. You already know what's up. So,
yeah. So he's already hopping in Hopkins' DMs. He's doing what he can to try to get him here. Hopkins was in Nashville Sunday night to attend the CMA Fest, which is at Nissan Stadium. So give him a good look. You can see they pulled out all the stops for him with the whatever private car he had with the video screen inside it that said "Welcome to Nashville." DeAndre Hopkins photoshopped him into a Titans jersey in his number 10, which, by the way, there's no number 10 on the Titans roster now because Des Fitzpatrick's no longer here. So if Hopkins is looking around like, what's best for my brand and my image, if I go to the Titans, I can keep my number, and he might like that. I don't know if that will matter at all, but hey, it's something.
The last point I want to make before we welcome our guest to a lot of people talking about why would he want to go there? And I'm going to kind of put a bow on it by taking it back to the beginning. I think people underrate how much these guys appreciate good coaching, solid ownership. It means more to them than it does to fans, because put yourself in their shoes. Just think of yourself. I mean, you're an employer. You like working somewhere where you've got good bosses, right? Good teammates, good ownership, good CEO. You appreciate those things, right? Football players are no different. They appreciate those things. I go back to an interview that Sean Payton did in the offseason, and he's going to take the Chargers job if it comes open. And not saying anything bad about the Chargers owner, but it's Justin Herbert. It's Justin Herbert. It's Justin Herbert. And he went on a talk show and they said, quarterback's the first thing that matters to you, right? And he said, God, no, it's ownership. I mean, I want to make sure I'm working for a good owner. It matters, right? And I think Miss Amy Adams-Strunk's done a great job. I think Hop loves Mike Vrabel a lot, likes Tim Kelly, probably likes Charles London. He had good years under all of them, right? There was never really an issue there. I never saw an issue between Hopkins and Tim Kelly, or a Hopkins and a Charles London. And then when Vrabel left, you go back and dig up the old quote, right? Whereas when Bill O'Brien left, he said, "There's no relationship between us," right? And when Vrabel left, he said, "Yeah, I love Vrabel. He's going to be a terrific head coach." So these things matter, and hopefully. We'll see who else gets involved. That's what I was going to mention earlier. I'm very curious. Does he take other meetings? You would think he will. Where?
Yeah.
If it's not the Patriots, who emerges as a dark horse? There's been some chatter with the Cleveland Browns, the Deshaun Watson situation's obvious. They should be interested, the Browns. They're kind of all in with Watson. He had a terrible year last year when he came back from suspension. They got to be doing everything they can to try to salvage that contract and salvage the player. Yeah. So they got a pretty good receiving core. They added a couple of guys, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman. None of them are as important as DeAndre Hopkins, right? So you pair him up with Amari Cooper, there's no excuses for Watson.
And make Watson.
Will there be someone else? Will a team like the Green Bay Packers emerge, who have a very, very young receiving core? New York Jets said they're good. Will the Bills and Chiefs have a meeting? I mean, I have a strange feeling they won't. They've been the two teams everyone's been saying it's going to be. It's easy to understand why it makes sense, but I don't know that they're going to be able to compete from a money perspective. And we talked about it. They're always creative ways, to create money. But the Bills, Brandon Beane, he's talked about it a few times, and he seems pretty hesitant to get involved in the market.
I think that with the Bills, it seems like less likely that it'll happen there. With the Chiefs, I mean, everyone talks about the Chiefs cap space, but everything I just said about the Titans cap space holds true. If they wanted to do the Odell Beckham deal, and make this year's cap hit $3.5 million, they could easily do that. So,
and if he wants to win, he should have a lot of interest.
I'll say, from everything we've heard, and obviously we don't talk to DeAndre Hopkins or his people, so we don't really know. But it sounds like he's more interested in that money than the chance to win a ring. And I mean, you can't really blame him. You're 30 years old, playing a sport with the shortest career span of any of the major sports. Go get your last giant paycheck, and then you could chase the ring next year or the year after. But if he can get $15 million from someone, to play this year and not chase a ring, and then go get $5 or $6 million the following year to chase a ring, I would do that if I was him, because this could be his last chance to get a $15 million contract, especially for, one season. So I don't blame him one bit. I just hope that the Titans, can pitch him on, why he would be a good fit in Nashville. Mike Vrabel said in his press conference the other day that we want people who want to be here. I was done recruiting when I left Ohio State. Like, hey, I mean, if that works, it works. Kind of reminds me of how the AFC Richmond got Zava in Ted Lasso. Non-recruiting him, but
that didn't work out so well though. So.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, but Hopkins may want to be recruited, or maybe he'll respect the we want people who want to be here thing. You never know how that's going to work, but it is an interesting approach that Mike Vrabel seems to be taking there. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But yes, I mean, all things to say, Hopkins would be a major, major addition to this Titans receiving core. He would boost Ryan Tannehill's numbers. He would have a great impact on the young receivers like Traylon Burks, Kyle Phillips, even some of the older guys like Nick Westbrook-Akina. So get him in Nashville if they can. I think that's going to do it for our Hopkins discussion. Are we ready to bring on the great Jim Wyatt and then talk about Titans minicamp that wrapped up last week?
The one and only Jim Wyatt. There's only one in the whole world.
Absolutely. So let's do it then. Without further ado, let's welcome in Titans senior writer Jim Wyatt to help us talk Titans minicamp, which wrapped up last week. A little bit different schedule this year. Titans having some more OTAs after minicamp. Mike Vrabel mentioned that he's always canceled the last day of minicamp, so he didn't want to do that this year, so he moved minicamp up. I kind of like the move. But Jim, from what you saw out there, we've heard a lot of hype about Treylon Burks and the potential breakout season that he could have. What have you seen from Burks this offseason that, kind of feeds that belief?
Well, I think just the fact that he does look good, from a physical standpoint. Everybody remembers what happened last year. He got here, he dealt with the conditioning and dealt with the asthma and just couldn't finish practices. I think, he was just kind of a beaten down guy until he got through some of that stuff. And then the season started, he flashed and, showed some potential, but just had trouble staying healthy. This year, I noticed a guy who is clearly in shape. He looks like he's a lot more defined, looks faster, extremely confident, and you can tell the team is confident in him. I've been at every OTA so far. It's 7 of them, and then all the minicamp practices. It seems like every time they go to team drills, start the offense versus defense. It seems like Tannehill's going to Burks on the first play of every team period, and I think there's confidence there on both sides, and it should pay off with a really good year for him. But he's got to stay healthy. That's one of the biggest things that held him back last year. It's the biggest thing that held him back last year.
Yeah, I think everyone's super excited about him, as they should be, Jim. Speaking of Ryan Tannehill, I do want to get into the quarterbacks, the other quarterbacks, if you will. Curious to get your thoughts on what you've seen from Will Levis and Malik Willis. Obviously, anytime a new quarterback, it's almost like the shiny new toy, right? Malik sort of feels like the forgotten man in the fan base, but by all accounts has shown a lot of improvement this summer as well.
He's definitely gotten better. I mean, he still has some days where he'll be off target with some throws and his footwork and mechanics get a little bit off, but he looks a lot different to me as far as getting the ball out faster, being more decisive. I think he has been more accurate. And, I think he has made strides. I mean, I think right so far this offseason, I think Malik Willis has outperformed Will Levis, and but that shouldn't be a huge surprise. I mean, he's has a year under his belt. He's getting more reps. He's familiar with these receivers. Will Levis is still finding his way. I found it. Just shook my head at some of the, Will Levis chatter from, I guess, one of the OTAs where he was underwhelming or I forget what the exact wording was, and people reporting he had a rough, OTA. Well, he's a rookie. I mean, I don't know what people expected from him right out of the gate. I mean, he wasn't going to come in here and just look like Tom Brady in year 10, as a rookie. I mean, yeah, he had he missed the net on that, in those individual drills that they do. And I can promise you that every quarterback that's ever taken part in that drill, and that net's been out here for years and years, everybody's missed that net. I don't care if it's a rookie or whether it's a 10-year guy, that happens. And so it's just so happy he got caught on missing the net, and everybody thinks, oh, this guy's terrible. So, I mean, just give him time. I mean, he's not there yet. He's a work in progress. He's not getting a lot of reps. He's still finding his way, but he's still got the strong arm. He's still got the flick of the wrist that gets the ball downfield, and he'll get more reps as time goes.
Yeah, we'll see where he's at when training camp comes around and what those two guys look like in the preseason. Jim, one of the bigger storylines surrounding Titans offseason was Kevin Byard, the whole contract pay cut situation, his absence from the voluntary OTAs, but he was back for mini camp. What kind of impact did you see from him being back out there, and how much does he mean to this defense?
Well, I mean, you could tell, I think the very first, practice he was out there, just what he means, because I think he stopped, I think it was Tajay Spears on a little swing pass on 3rd down. He stopped him short of a first down because he was right there, and there was a ball across the middle intended for Chicaconquo. He broke that up quickly. I mean, guys love having him out there. He brings a lot of energy. And, it's a different team with him out there, for a number of reasons. What happens next? I don't know. I mean, I thought Easton asked a good question, to Kevin, at that press conference about whether or not him being there, whether that kind of signaled, some finality there and whether everything's in the past now. And I think the way Kevin answered it, kind of told you that there's, maybe still working through some things, and we'll see how that all ends up. But, Titans, certainly are a better team with Kevin Byard on it. And I hope, by the time training camp starts that everybody's happy and that all that off-season chatter has been put behind us.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I think one of the important things is he's still playing at an extremely high level, right? There really has been no tail off to his play whatsoever, despite the advancing age. Jim, one topic I find people aren't talking enough about, and kickers are people too, right? And we never talk enough about kickers. And this is an interesting battle here, right? A second-year UDFA in Caleb Shudak, who only kicked in one game last year, wasn't healthy. And then a first-year UDFA, right? And Trey Wolf out of Texas Tech, I believe it is. What have you seen from those two guys in camp? And do you think there will be a need to add a veteran to the mix?
I think time will tell on the whole veteran aspect of it. I think that's what happens when you've got two young kickers on the team in the offseason, and you just kind of let them, duke it out and just see how things go. And if you don't like what you see during the off season, you get through the preseason into some of these games, and you're not satisfied there, then you go out and get a veteran. I think, man, I'm trying to remember, way back in the day when Rob Aronis was competing. I think it was 2005, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Ola Kimron. That's a blast from the past. I think those guys competed during the off season, and they just want to see what they had in those guys. So they both kicked, and then you discover that, man, you had a stud in Rob Baronis here. He was consistently had a tremendous leg. He was making all those kicks, and it was his job that year out of camp, and it was his job for years and years to come because he was that good. I've seen some other years where guys compete in the off season, and then it's not really settled, and all of a sudden you're looking to try to find a kicker here before the season starts. So I think both those guys will get a chance to prove themselves. They've had a chance to do OTAs and minicamp. I think they'll have a chance in training camp, and they'll decide. I've charted the kicks during the open practices, at least the media practice. I've been to all the OTAs and minicamp. I'm not going to chart those because other people aren't out here allowed to do it. But the ones I've watched, Shudak is 14 of 15. Mm-hmm. And I say not the ones I watched, but the ones I've been able to chart because they've been open. Shudak is 14 of 15. Wolf is 29 of 32. They've both been good from long distance, and I think they'll continue to get chances.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important position that often gets overlooked. We saw how, some poor kicking last year cost the Titan at least, the week one game, maybe a couple others, but maybe they'll find a guy here with one of these UDFAs. Jim, final thoughts here. We really appreciate your time. I want to wrap up by asking you if there's anyone at, minicamp or throughout OTAs that caught your eye as sort of a standout surprise player that maybe you weren't expecting to pop as much as he did.
I'm trying to think. Standout guy is a surprise. I'll say this. And it's off season, and they're not in pads. But Jonathan Ward's a guy that I continue to write his name down. Maybe it's because he's getting so many reps. But the running back that finished the season last year, he's been pretty good to me. He's looked fast. Other guys, but the main guys who were consistently making plays are Tajay Spears, who's going to be fun to watch. Chicaconquo has been good every day. some guys have flashed here and there, but those are the most consistent guys to me. And, the O-line and D-line, people ask me about them this time of year. It's just not really fair to judge too much without the pads on. I think the D linemen have a big advantage there because O-linemen can't, they have pads on. And
Yeah.
so there's only so much you can tell, but the skill positions of the guys that stand out, and Tajay Spears has been the biggest standout out here. But again, that's what he's known for, is to be able to move in space and make guys miss. And he's done just that. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be a really, really good. I'm just saying, I remember Chris Henry way back in the day, another blast from the past. He looked great in these off-season workouts and then never did show up on the field. I think it's going to show up with Spears, but you just got to take some of this off-season stuff with a grain of salt.
Yeah, of course.
Ward had that great play against Jacksonville in Week 18, didn't he? In the do or die.
Yeah, he was going to be one of the unsung heroes of that game. He made a third down catch, I think,
yes.
That extended that drive and looked like it was maybe going to allow the Titans to run out the clock, and then we all know what happened next. But I think he's flashed to me and shown some speed getting to the outside.
Yeah, we know what happened next. It was a Josh Dobbs incomplete pass that was ruled a fumble, whatever, NFL officials. We'll let that one go, I guess. Justin, do you have anything else for Jim before we let you go?
I don't know, Jim. Appreciate the heck out of your time as always, man. This has been terrific.
Okay, appreciate you guys having me on. We'll do this again sometime when I've got even more time, and you guys have a good one. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank you. Try to take some time off over these next few weeks. Try to enjoy.
We'll do that. I can promise you. I don't want to promise because I know what happens anytime you think. I've done that many times over the years where you think it's going to be quiet and then something always pops. But hopefully I can sneak some downtime in here to get refreshed for rebooted for the season.
Jim, I want you to get the off time, but I also won't mind if you have to, pop up and write a DeAndre Hopkins story here in the next couple of weeks.
I'm hoping if that happens, it's sooner rather than later because usually when the off-season program ends, that's kind of time.
Yeah. Yeah, fingers crossed. Thanks again for your time, Jim. Thanks again to Jim for his thoughts there. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he said. It's interesting, he wasn't here for the beginning of this podcast when you talked about Treylon Burks needing to stay healthy because he mentioned that almost right away when we brought up the hype around Burks. So I agree with a lot of what Jim said. Tajay Spears got a lot of hype, and he mentioned Chigakwanko's making plays. So I think you kind of nailed the opening of this pod.
Jim and I are like this, okay? And what Jim says, I say. What I say, Jim says. Everybody, if you're a smart football fan, you know how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that will do it for this episode of the Music City Audible podcast. Thanks to everyone for listening. Broadway Sports Media.
Can I say one thing?
Are you going to talk about your Peter Skoronski O-line coach piece? Because I was going to plug it, but go for it.
Well, I was going to talk about your Peter Skoronski O-line coach piece. That
was a funny Twitter moment where I was given credit for your interview series for some reason. I guess people get the Justins confused.
No, go ahead and plug it.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it yet, Justin's piece interviewing a Northwestern O-line coach, Peter Skoronski's position coach in college, is up now, BroadwaySportsMedia.com. I believe it's for insiders only, but it will unlock for everyone to read in a few days. If you're not a Broadway insider, though, go become an insider so you can read that article right now because it's really insightful on who the player that Peter Skoronski is, his intelligence, his work ethic. It's a nice piece to read, so I highly recommend that to everyone. Thanks again to everyone who listened today. Next week, we got a fun pod. We're going to do an AFC South 2023 season preview. So we're going to catch you guys up on what's going on with the Jags, the Colts, the Texans, if you're not following closely enough, and where the Titans fit into that conversation and kind of make some picks and predictions for how the standings will shake out. So that's next week. We'll be back for that. Until then, in the meantime, follow Justin on Twitter at JustinM_NFL. You can follow me at Titans Film Room. And y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway Sports Media production.